Someone knocked on my door at 3 a.m. and it made me question my entire life. Imagine this. You are in your senior year of high school. It's a dreary Friday evening and you drive home in the rain. You greet your tired mother and quiet father. You are greeted by your ecstatic younger sister who is clearly happy to see you. You sit down to eat dinner and your father has clearly been drinking. Your parents stare blankly at each other. You start to talk and they start to argue. One thing leads to another and before you know it, your sister is screaming and your mother is bleeding out on the floor. That is a difficult situation but you get through it. You call the police, you get through the trial. It's not an easy situation but you got through it. I never thought I would go through anything like it again. But with what's been happening recently, not only have things gotten as bad but some recent discoveries have recontextualized the entire ordeal. Yesterday I came home from work and everything seemed a little bit off. Firstly, the internet was down in my apartment complex so I switched on cable TV to see the news. I heated up yesterday's leftovers for dinner while the overzealous reporter skimmed through international bombings and political controversies. Suddenly, he changed his tone to an excited, shrill exclamation. I knew there was something juicy coming. I turned up the volume and the news anchor's exaggerated, mock transatlantic accent filled the room. This evening I have some unsettling news to bring to you all. There is a criminal at large having escaped from Fox River State Penitentiary, Joliet, Illinois. Authorities encourage the public to remain vigilant as they search for the convict. In accordance with the violent nature of his crimes, it had become a top priority for local police that this man be found and detained. Due to the nature of the crime, minimal details can be given. But the man's physical appearance is that of a 60-year-old, 6'4" with a medium weight and heavy-set build. The U.S. Marshals and other agencies are assisting in the search. As of today, no sightings have been confirmed. I remembered the name of that prison from all those years ago. That's where my father was being kept. It was an image that had fueled my nightmares for years. The idea that my father could escape and return for me or my sister has haunted my entire existence since then. I thought of my sister and hoped she was all right. She hadn't come to visit in so long. But my mind remained clear because that description did not fit my father at all. With the news over and the internet still down, I decided to go for a run to clear my head and occupy myself. As I descended the steps from my apartment towards the door and the pouring rain, I quickly checked the communal mailboxes in the lobby which was hospital clean as always. I was surprised to find a wax-sealed envelope addressed to me. I hurried back up to my apartment and left it on the table. During my run, the weather changed and rain began pelting off the ground with a vengeance. Some kind of security guard turned me away from a particular street. I didn't KNKW what that was about. I stopped for shelter under a bus stop and glimpsed a shiny piece of metal under the bench. I picked up the object curiously and noticed that it was a Swiss Army knife. I pocketed the discovery and ran out from under the bus shelter. Thunder crackled in the distance as I returned to the building. When I returned to my room, the power was back so I hurriedly put clothes in the washing machine and went for a shower. Shortly after I had come out of the shower, the power went out again. I entered the kitchen by torchlight and sat down at the table to open the letter. I instinctively reached for the utility knife and slit open the manila paper. On the front of the folded piece of paper, it read, "Do what thou'st will be the whole piece of law." This was followed by a symbol that could only be described as a three-eyed goat-like or demonic entity. I unfurled the letter and began to read it. Dear, name redacted. If you have received this letter, it means that our plans have succeeded. One of your father's associates has escaped from Fox River. Among the many missions he has set out to complete before being detained again, a message he must send to you is of top priority. Your father is launching another appeal against his conviction. He believes he can win this time. But he needs your help to prove his innocence. We will be in touch. Please do not trust anyone. They will try to stop us. But we will stop at nothing until we'll find you. Sincerely, the Church of Starry Wisdom. I dropped the paper in disgust, my fingers shaking with apprehension. What was going on? My father was guilty, dead to rights. My sister and I were the only witnesses. I wished my sister was there at that moment. She could definitely have helped with all of this confusion. I never felt confused around her. Who could have sent such a letter? What was this Church of Starry Wisdom? I genuinely had no idea. After hours of pacing around the room, I began to feel a sense of dread and despair overcome me. How were they going to contact me again? Another letter surely, but when would the post arrive with weather like this? I heard faint voices from the hallway and immediately felt extremely paranoid. I decided to call my sister. I had already taken out my phone and dialed the number before I remembered that the internet was down. I hadn't topped up my data in a while and relied on the Wi-Fi to connect to calls. I unlatched the wired phone from the wall and dialed the familiar number. It rang out for a few minutes and eventually connected to an operator. An unusual voice chimed in, "Which room do you want to connect to?" No. "I want to connect to an external number if that's alright," I replied quizzically. There was an awkward moment of silence before the operator returned with the chilling statement, "I'm sorry. You can only connect to numbers within the building today." I thanked the operator and hung up the phone. It must have something to do with the storm. I decided to have an early night to try to forget all of this madness. I grabbed the letter and put it in a drawer. I proceeded to pick up the knife when I noticed something disturbing. Along the spine of the knife, there were a line of dots and dashes. I immediately recognized two as Morse code. I scrambled around my pile of books for one that may contain some kind of translation for the code. Eventually, I found an encyclopedia and fervently flipped through the pages to the letter M section. Before long, I noticed that the symbols were numbers with a few lines in between. After translating the symbols, I gasped in horror. The numbers read out a date. October 4th, 02. It was my birthday. I dropped the knife and immediately rushed to my bedroom. I couldn't deal with this and thought the best option would be to sleep on it. After an hour of shaky breathing and violent shudders of fear, I finally welcomed the kids of consciousness. After a while, I woke up to the sound of light knocking at the door. I decided to ignore it and try to go back to sleep. Whoever it was could wait until morning. But the noise persisted and escalated to a relentless pounding. Somebody really wanted to talk to me. What could be so urgent? After a while, I had enough of this. I got out of bed and walked bleary-eyed towards the door of my bedroom. I opened it and the sound of the stranger at my door echoed around the confined living room. As I neared the door, my hand outstretched towards the handle, I hesitated. What was I doing? How could I be sure of what was waiting on the other side of this fragile wooden board? I tilted my head and pressed my ear against it. I imagined my sister on the other side. Maybe the call had somehow gone through and she was here to comfort me. But before I had the chance to open the lock, the door came crashing down in a flurry of splinters. The force of the breakage knocked me onto the ground with a sprinkling of wood chips and planks across my aching body. I heard multiple people rush into the room, arranging themselves around the place. One loomed over me before violently forcing my head onto the ground and shouting at me to stay down. They said it was a breach on the system. They couldn't understand how I had just walked out through the lobby with no questioning. They said I wasn't allowed to bring a knife into the facility. They said I must be lying about the letter. No mail had been delivered for days with the storm. They put me in solitary confinement with a heightened dosage of medication. I couldn't feel anything for a few days. But when I regained full consciousness, I knew something was wrong. I definitely received a letter and I don't remember being admitted to a mental health facility. When I get out of here, I am going to get to the bottom of this.